It's Jim O'Hara, proud to say our whole house heating and cooling is handled with a Rheem from Clower Heating and Air. Now is the time to get your system checked. Make sure it's operating at 100% for the summer. I cannot say enough good things about our Rheem system and the impressive installation that Clower did. I watched it myself. Clower Heating and Air does it right the first time. You'll save hundreds of dollars both on your installation and on your monthly bills. Our system's 2 years old. We've never been more comfortable. Clower Heating and Air, 794-0101, 794-0101.
I can't tell you how many times I've gotten compliments on the logo for the Pearled Up Podcast Presents, and it's about time that we give some proper dues to our friends over at Tiki T's Screen Printing and Designs, the creative genius behind the Pearled Up Podcast Presents logo, the creative genius behind the Platoon Crystal Skull t-shirt. So many other designs working with Community School District 205, Badger Combatives. The list goes on and on. Look, bottom line, if you need a design to help you stand out, help you build your brand, whatever the case is, banners, fight shorts, t-shirts, campaign posters, you name it, koozies. If you just want a nice picture of you and your family hanging above your mantle, look no further than Tiki T's Screen Printing and Designs. Hand-drawn original artwork transferred to pretty much anything you need. And I know this is another one of those cases where, all right, Vargas, whatever, sounds too good to be true. Stop. Get on social media. Search Tiki T's Screen Printing and Designs. Man, honestly, if you want any further proof, look at the Pearled Up Podcast Presents logo. Look at the Crystal Skull Platoon t-shirt. All freehand drawings, courtesy of Tiki T's Screen Printing and Design. Man, don't settle for clip art, generic, run-of-the-mill, oops, I hope I don't run into this design on somebody else's shirt kind of artwork. Make sure what you want is exactly the design that you get. Get a hand-drawn original from Tiki T's Screen Printing and Designs. What?
The following is a Haze Effects Media production. Independent broadcasting excellence.
We're hot with Caged Aggression President CEO Mike Goodwin, Dominic Martin, Jordan Hinman, Jeffrey Wilson, Blake Goodenbauer, Kane Luger, Austin Hubbard, Tommy Hand, Keone Koch, Kevin Burke. Stay pearled, world.
This is the Pearled Up Podcast Presents with Jason Vargas and Andy Hayes. Brought to you by TTT Screen Printing and Design, Whiteout Promotions, and Caged Aggression MMA. And now, for your host of the Pearled Up Podcast Presents, Jason Vargas and Andy Hayes.
Yes. And if you enjoyed the Caged Aggression 30 Triple Threat Rap Show, let me hear you say, yes! Ladies and gentlemen of the Pearled Up Platoon, hey, thank you, each and every one of you, for being here with us. Once again, during this beautiful thing of ours, you know my name, the reason that I'm here, it is always the same. It is to edutain. My name is Jason. I'm just one of your weekly consistent co-hosts here on the Pearled Up Podcast Presents. With me, as always, you know, he really doesn't need an introduction. You know, he's always going to get an introduction. He is the man with the master plan. You know, never, ever forget about those golden hands. He is producer extraordinaire, Sir Andy Beavis Hayes. Brother Hayes, what it do?
Grinding, man. Playing catch up after last week, the Easter holiday and all that. Continuing to work on some new innovations, finishing some old ones. But also getting geared up and prepared for the Caged Aggression 31 Chain Reaction Rap Show, which is scheduled to drop on May 11th. Not so far away. So, yeah, a lot going on over this way, man.
All right, I can respect that. Well, look, man, honestly, you really do deserves some R&R. I know you put in a lot of work, man. I saw the notebook of notes that you had, the multiple notes and, the multiple pages of notes. Man, another one well done. I'm glad we got the plan for the next one because, of course, already announced Caged Aggression 31 Chain Reaction right around the corner. So look, we got the takeaways. We got all that. We got a fun one for you today. We got a couple breaks here for you. We're going to take a little bit of a break from some of the Caged Aggression action, but of course, you know exactly where to go for the rest of that juicy Caged Aggression event coverage. The best series leading up to Caged Aggression MMA events. Brother Hayes, hey, do me a favor. Tell them where that might be and give them that business before we get into today's episode.
Of course, you can find all the most recent episodes from 2020, some going back into 2019, by visiting pearleduppodcast.com, including all of the rap shows for the events going back to Caged Aggression 27, what I'm calling the OG rap show formats at this point, because, well, there will be some changes coming to the rap shows for future events, starting with Caged Aggression 31, so be on the lookout for that. And while you're visiting pearleduppodcast.com, why not stop into the Pearled Outlet, located at store.pearleduppodcast.com. Browse through all of our t-shirts, long sleeve tees, hoodies, beanies, and so much more. All of our designs are present and accounted for, from the classic Crystal Skull t-shirt, the Tank Assault tee, New Pearled Order, and other designs you might not be familiar with, but equally pack the punch of any of the classic lineup. You can also get your hands on one of the designs from the Henchman Revolution collection, for which all the commissions made go to the Hinman family to help with medical expenses from his last fight. And lastly, you can design your very own garment in the all-new Designer, where you can choose from an assortment of in-house and stock designs to create a unique design that is specific to you. Again, that's located at store.pearleduppodcast.com. It's simple, it's easy, it's your personal design closet straight to your door. It's the Pearled Outlet, located at store.pearleduppodcast.com. Other than that, be sure to visit our Facebook page, give us a like and follow over there, and be sure to subscribe, rate, and review. Unsubscribe, resubscribe, rate, and review us again. All 4 and 5 star ratings and reviews will be entered to win a t-shirt from the Pearled Up Podcast Presents, and we can be found on most of the major podcast platforms, which gives you multiple chances to rate and review the show if you should choose to be kind enough to do so. That's going to do it for me, man. Back to you, bro.
Gracias. Appreciate you, brother. Always appreciate you, man. Look, you know what? I also appreciate a good conversation. I think that goes without saying. You're here. You're a member of the Pearled Up Platoon. You're listening to the Pearled Up Podcast Presents. You know I love a good conversation. That's why I have them at least once a week. Hopefully with someone new. This week's guest co-host, it's no exception to that. It's someone new. FYI, full disclosure here on the Pearled Up Podcast Presents. We had a few technical difficulties early on and a little bit towards the end. We straightened things out. Honestly, don't really know what happened. You may even be able to hear us fumbling through it here and there. I know Brother Hayes is going to clean it up a little bit. But look, man, that usually does happen when we get close. When you listen to today's conversation, you'll know what I'm talking about. Today we have a first-time guest co-host. And, I'm going to preface it with this. Just like I've had in a number of different conversations lately. I think my goal for the foreseeable and possibly unforeseeable future is to remain open-minded. Remain open-minded to pretty much most things. Because there's a lot of things that I would rather remain open-minded and not surprised about than to dismiss them and be absolutely wrong. Ladies and gentlemen of the Proto Platoon, this is a fun conversation today. I'm looking forward to having this guest co-host back for some more conversations down the road, especially some that, might not have the technical difficulties there in the beginning. But look, I'm going to quit and let the conversation pick up where I leave off. Brother Hayes, if you could, get that thing hot, get that thing ready. I will get the rest of the platoon on their feet. And let's have a nice, loud first-time salute for my new friend, the mighty David Weiss. All right, we are hot, just as promised, with my new friend, Dave Weiss. And Dave, first of all, I want to thank you for taking some time out of your schedule to come here, have a little discussion with us here today. And second thing, your scheduling system is top-notch, man. I have to look into something like that for myself.
It's the Calendly. There's a free version, and then you could also pay for it, but the free version does tons. Because I schedule so many appointments, I use the paid version. It's cheap, and it's couldn't do it without it. So a plug to Calendly.
There you go.
And
free.
It's the dumbest. I hate the name, but it's a great system.
That's all right. It's free, and everybody that knows me knows that's my favorite four-letter word. So,
yeah.
Yes, sir. So, look, I know you're new to the Proto Podcast Presents. I know that you're a good sport. And one thing that we do, Dave, we are primarily talk to people that are involved in the combat sports world. Every now and again, we trail off and go down different avenues and things like that. But one thing no one on this show is an exception to. We have a couple segments that we like to use to get to know some of our guest co-hosts a little bit better. And the one we're going to use today, I think it's the perfect lead-in for our conversation today. It's called Tap, Snap, or Nap. Brother Hayes, if we could get a little bit of intro, please, before I explain this to Dave.
It's time for Tap, Snap, or Nap.
All right, so Dave, how Tap, Snap, or Nap works. What we're gonna do, we've got words, we've got phrases, not necessarily true fact or anything like that, but what we like to hear from our guest co-hosts, if they agree with the words or phrase they hear, they're gonna say the word tap. They agree with it. If they disagree with the words or phrase, they'll say snap. They disagree with it. And even though it's kind of the same in the mixed martial arts world, it works for this segment. If you don't care about the phrase, topic, or word whatsoever, you'll just say nap and we'll move on. We're going to keep this one short because I know that we have a lot to talk about. So if that makes sense, we'll go ahead and move on.
Tap.
He gets it. We usually have a long, complicated disclaimer that we read before we get into something like this. But I really feel like disclaimers just give people another reason to start getting sensitive. So it basically amounts to the words and the statements following don't necessarily reflect the views or beliefs of anybody involved in this podcast. This is obviously strictly for entertainment purposes. So, if all the sensitive people are satisfied, we'll get on with the Dave Weiss edition of Tap, Snap, or Nap. The Earth is round.
Snap? Well, actually, tap. Tap. It is round.
Okay.
It's just not spherical.
Okay. All right. I got you. So look, I appreciate you for hanging in there, being a good sport. If we run into any of those difficulties, obviously we'll clean those portions of the conversation up before we hang it up and put it on display for everyone else. But no, I do have that question built in. It is fun, and like I told you earlier, Dave, we talk to a lot of people that are involved. Very deeply and passionately in the combat sports world. And, a lot of our conversations tend to go towards, truth-seeking conversations. So, our conversation here today, not going to be too far off base for a lot of our normal listeners in the platoon, but I'll tell you, I very rarely do any kind of research leading into my conversations. I like my conversations to be organic and just kind of flow and take place naturally. You were a little different. So number one, I applaud you for that. I did go out, I did a little research. And Dave, I have to start now because, a lot of our listeners, might not know. I was first introduced to you by another name, and that was Flat Earth Dave.
Yeah.
How'd you come by that name real quick?
It kind of just found me. Somebody called me Flat Earth Dave, and it kind of stuck. Did you? Are you familiar with David Nino Rodriguez, the heavyweight fighter?
Yes.
Yeah, we did an interview. He interviewed me kind of reluctantly. He's like, "All right, I'll talk to him." And by the time I was done with the interview, he was holding his head, going, "Oh my God, my whole life has been a lie," and he now sees it. So for those of you that are listening that think this is the dumbest thing ever, I was you, but now I'm me. And all you have to do is listen and look, and it's literally, I'm Morpheus. I'm handing you the red pill or the blue pill. Today is your decision which one you're going to take.
Well, look, I told you I did a little bit of research, and anyone that's following the show knows that my stance on this is, for the most part, don't care. It takes an awful lot to shock me nowadays. And then I stumble upon you, and I'm listening to one of your talks, and I honestly, for an instant, thought you were talking to me because you said, now I know that you're probably thinking, I don't care, doesn't matter, I still have to get up, go to work, pay the bills in the morning. That's me. I still feel like that. You were, and I had to turn around for a second when I heard you say that. But I'll tell you, I can't say my mind was changed by the end of the conversation that I was listening to, but I wanted to run something past you before we get into the meat of our conversation. When people hear the term flat Earth, I kind of feel, based on what you were saying in your conversation, I feel that the term flat Earth in and of itself is a little misleading. And that's what I wanted to run past you. What are your thoughts on that? Especially after I heard your stance on and your explanations for what you meant what you mean when you say flat Earth.
Yeah, if you take it literally, flat Earth, it's not like a piece of paper flat. There's hills and valleys and trenches and mountains, but the world is flat. The world, they say, is 70% water. I think there's a lot more water than that, but let's just say it's 70% water. Large bodies of water at rest lay flat, testably, scientifically, provably, measurably flat, and there is no curvature. So, if we take the size of the Earth that they tell us, there's a curvature formula for that. We can use that curvature formula, and we can see too far. That's the thing that got me. When I started looking into flat Earth, I didn't look into flat Earth because, oh, cool, flat Earth. I went in kicking and screaming. I didn't want to hear it. I banned people from our social media for even suggesting that I look into flat Earth. And then I was forced to look, and I went in with a closed mind. Like, I'm going to just disprove flat Earth and prove the globe and be done with this and get all these morons to stop bothering me. And for 2 weeks, I tried to find one proof of the globe. I'm so confident that there's no proof of the globe. I'm offering a Bitcoin to anybody that can give me one proof of the globe, just one, right? And so far, I haven't had to give away my Bitcoin. So once you look, you can't unsee it. But they've brainwashed us since before we can talk into globe mentality. Kids are Sesame Street. It's all about the globe. They have astronauts and rockets on there, and the yip yaps talking about the sun and the moon and the Mars and all of this stuff, it's all propaganda to control our minds. And the question is why? Why would they lie? The shape of the earth doesn't matter. It's the lie that matters. The ball is a prison for your mind. They don't want your mind being able to realize where you are, what you are, who you are, and the power of your mind. And the analogy I use is Neo from The Matrix. At the beginning, his mind is trapped in the Matrix, and by the end of the movie, he freed his mind from the Matrix, and he became more powerful and knew the power of his mind. So that's why it matters.
So you started your journey looking to disprove what you were hearing as far as the earth being flat. And there's a lot of evidence out there pointing towards one decision or the other. What was it that finally tipped you in the other direction?
Well, it's when I tried to find out why I believed in the globe. Well, the reason we believe in the globe is because Bill Nye, the lion guy with the bow tie, and Neil deGrasse Tyson, the failed actor, they told us it was a globe, but there's no science behind it. People say flat earthers are science deniers. No, we love science, real science. There's no science of the globe. All science proves the earth is a flat, non-rotating plane. All physics, the word physics is just a word, but actual physics prove the earth is flat. Think about this. The heliocentric model relies on the Big Bang, right? The Big Bang, nothing exploded, became everything. Okay, that's crazy. And then all of the dirt and rocks, they coalesced into these big rocky balls. And then all of the gases coalesced into bigger balls with even more gravity, and they left a vacuum in between. How do you have a gas ball in a vacuum?
That's a great question. And for some of our listeners that may not be as familiar with it, when you say heliocentric, you mean the model that involves, Earth and the planets in our solar system rotating around the sun.
Right.
Right.
Here's the thing. People say, well, what about all the other planets? Are they flat? No, they're not planets. They used to be called wandering stars. They're lights in the sky within the Earth system. The Earth is not a pancake floating in space where you get to the edge and fall off. No, that the Earth is not a pancake with a Game of Thrones ice wall around it. That's a mind control. If you try to research flat Earth, you end up with the Flat Earth Society. You end up with their images of these turnips floating in space. None of that is what flat earthers believe. The Flat Earth Society is a government-controlled disinformation site. So what is the flat Earth if it's not a pancake floating in space? Think of what a pond is. A pond is where water accumulates in the low spot in the land, and then the hills around the pond are the shoreline, where it's higher than the water, right? So the world oceans are just, excuse me, a giant pond, a giant lake. So think about it. You have a giant lake. You have islands, which are all the continents that surround, that are in the lake. Water surrounds them, but the water itself, the edge of the lake, is surrounded by land that's just higher than the water surface. And that land is the highest land on Earth. It's called Antarctica. Antarctica is not a continent at the bottom of a ball. Antarctica is the shoreline that surrounds our lakes. Antarctica is likely bigger than all of the oceans and all of the continents combined, maybe hundreds of times bigger. We live in the Antarctic basin. We're not moving, and everything we see in the sky is rotating above us.
Yeah, you mentioned Neil deGrasse Tyson earlier and being a failed actor. And, I had a brief thought for a moment when you mentioned that. And I feel like anyone that's listened to a podcast, or his podcast in particular, kind of agrees with what I'm about to say. When he answers some of those questions, some of those complicated questions, he fires off these really in-depth answers. And a lot of them, Dave, they sound like they're rehearsed and scripted. It'd be really tough to give those answers on the spot. You know what I mean? So
let me imitate Neil. Hey, Neil, what is gravity? We don't know. We don't know what gravity is. We can describe it. We can make equations about it, but we don't know. And as a matter of fact, gravity needs 96% or some high 90 percentile of dark matter and dark energy to make it work. And it still doesn't work. They have problems with modeling gravity because gravity is a nonsensical, ridiculous G. It's their god. Without gravity, they don't have their heliocentric model, and gravity is literally a joke. It's a theory. I'm not saying it's a theory. They say it's a theory, and so gravity doesn't exist. There is a downward force, in my opinion, and that has to do with electricity and magnetism, and it's completely different than mass attracting mass.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because, I was going to mention that, part of what I was talking about earlier when I mentioned the term flat Earth being a little misleading is, the talk that I was listening to, you really, I guess when I think of flat Earth, I don't start thinking of a lot of other possibilities that some experts have written about and talked about, like electric universe, kind of what you were just touching on a little bit ago. And in the talk that I was listening to in particular, one particular gentleman I listened to had mentioned one of the same thoughts that you did as far as, us not being able to survive very far off of Earth and,
Right.
due to the fact that we depend on the Earth's electricity to
Yes.
be able to live. So again, I kind of wanted to expand on that and maybe, again, not so much politic for the flat Earth, but I guess maybe wring some of the absurdity out of it, if that makes any kind of sense. Because like I said, again, going back to that term flat Earth, and I may even have been guilty of it to an extent, but again, it does sound a little bit just simple and basic. And, again, that's possibly part of what turns a lot of people off to even thinking of the possibility that there may be something else out there. I've read and seen some crazy theories, Dave, so nothing surprises me to this point.
It's Globers, no offense, all right? but I do shun you, look down upon people that are Globers. Just kidding. They have two things in common. One, they don't understand what the flat Earth is, and they don't understand what the globe is. Right? They don't understand that in a heliocentric model, we're spinning at 1,000 miles an hour. The tangential speed of a globe spinning at that speed would explode, and we can prove that scientifically. It would explode from the centrifugal or centripetal force. Then while that's going on, it's orbiting the sun at 66,600 miles an hour. Very interesting number. It's chasing the sun at 500,000 miles an hour, and it's moving sideways. The entire system's moving sideways at 1.3 million miles per hour. But somehow we don't feel any of that. Mainstream science says because of the spin of the Earth, the water bulges at the equator 14 miles high, but you don't notice it from space because 14 miles is really nothing in comparison to the size of the world. I used to think that was the coolest thing ever. 14-mile high bulge of water at the equator. How come Central Africa isn't underwater? Central Africa is not 14 miles high, right? Why isn't it underwater, under that ring of water? How come the Maldives, which are only like a foot or two above sea level, which are on the equator, how come they're not underwater, right? This is ridiculous. If it was 14 miles high and you're flying from America to South America, at what point do you triple your altitude just to skim over that hump, right? And the answer is never. Airplanes fly straight and level over an Earth plane. Crazy. When you really start looking into this stuff, none of the helio-nonsensical model makes any sense at all.
Well, I guess part of what, maybe begins to make a little bit of sense for some people is taking just the shape out of it altogether. And I think you might have touched on this in one of the talks that I was listening to, the fact that it seems like a lot of these different thoughts kind of converge on one another at some point, where again, unless I was stuck in between the dishes and dinner somewhere, you kind of brought in the fact, or not the fact, but the thought that this may be some sort of simulation that we're experiencing where we're here to kind of try and improve ourselves and the world around us. And like I said, it helps to just kind of take the shape out of it. And when you look at it like that, as more of like a plane, unless I'm misinterpreting what you were saying.
The earth is a realm, is, that's how I like to describe it. But we live here and we're having this experience. Again, this is just my personal feeling. I believe that, that our sole job here is to maintain control of our soul. Our souls are the currency of the universe, of the earth system. And everybody wants your soul, right? Evil wants to steal your soul, and they'll if you sell it, they'll buy it. And there's many people that lose control of their souls. Our God, the soul is a spark of God within us. It's the life force that's within us, and we have to maintain control of our soul and don't interfere with anyone else's free will. That's it. Those are the only rules, right? That's it. That's your goal. And the rule is don't interfere with other people's free will. Don't steal, don't kill, don't interfere with their free will. And maybe help your neighbor. That's a good thing too. And they don't want us to know that. Evil is trying to hide all of that. They're not hiding the shape of the earth. They're hiding the lie, because once you understand that the earth is created and that's an intelligently designed system, then you have to admit that there's a creator. And then you can take that wherever you want. There's Christians, there's Muslims, there's people that are just believe in a creator, whatever it is, there's a creator. And we are at the center of creation. So whatever that does for you, that's your own journey. But when you realize that nobody has dominion over you, that nobody can take away your free will, what the leaders, the elites, I hate calling them that, of this world are doing, they're literally getting us to give away our sovereignty. Is that the right word? I can't speak. They're getting us to, in fear, living. If you believe you live on a ball, you're spinning through infinite universe where an asteroid could take you at any moment. We're running out of dinosaur juice for our cars. There's a food shortage. There's a water shortage. The nuclear bombs are going to blow us up. You're living in fear when none of that is real. None of it's real. So when you're living in fear, you give away your power. You give away the power of your mind, the power of your mind to co-create in this space where this world, for lack of a better word, is magical, and they don't want you to know that. They don't want you to know that. Imagine if everyone in the world just united and said, no, elite, you're done. We are the many. They're not even the few. They're the nothing. They're the nothing, right? But people just blindly listen to false authority. They're giving it away. Nobody has authority over you.
That's interesting that you say that, because it's a common theme in my house, in discussions with my wife, with my kids, and even with a few close friends of mine. I've often said that people would be really surprised if just for one day, 1 hour, or even 1 minute, we could all get together, get on the same page, and pull in the same direction. I mean, I don't think anybody realizes just how powerful that would be. You said it. You said a lot of things that kind of resonated with some reading and research and just discussions that I've come across in the past. Not sure which way I want to go with them. I'll tell you one thing that you did say that's often kind of struck me as interesting is I guess the lie, the cover up. When I talk about things like flat earth, and when I say things like, it doesn't matter to me, I still have to get up in the morning, I still have mouths to feed, whatever that is. To an extent, I am being truthful there, Dave. The what doesn't matter as much to me as the why, and I think that's something that you've trying to been tiptoe around here, or I guess not so much tiptoe, but kind of dance around a little bit. The why, and some of that you hit on was the control and the soul in particular, which is something that I've read about quite a bit. And whether you're spiritual and religious, or whether you look to something else for your faith, that's something that we've been told, whether you're a Christian, a Muslim, whatever, is that you accept God and whatever your creator, whoever you accept as your God, into your heart, and he's a part of you. I've often been telling my kids and my wife here lately that I don't think we're necessarily being lied to per se. I think there's a lot being left out. Does that make sense?
Ask the question again.
I don't so much think we're being lied to as much as there are a ton of omissions. There's a lot being left out of what we're being told and what we've been told. I think that's a big part of it.
That's partially true, but they are lying to us. The moon missions and all space travel is literally to control your mind. It's to keep our minds in a prison and keep us under control. If people understood that we live in a created realm and perhaps there's more land beyond Antarctica, extra territory, extra terra, then people would stop obeying and people would leave. The tyranny that's happening right now. So they don't want people to know that there's more, and they don't want people to know that we can overpower them with our minds.
So Dave, you mentioned the moon mission and the lie there, and I know that there's a lot of people that speculate, a lot of that was done in a movie studio and on film. And I heard in one of your talks, you mentioned that NASA and Disney are essentially one and the same. And again, it made me think back to something that I read, probably 8 to 10 years ago or so. And that was, in times past, people that fancied themselves sorcerers, wizards, people that wanted to channel magic and the earth's natural energy, they would often go to the holly tree and use a branch or a stick from that tree or bush. Exactly. And I connected those dots for a second there. And, I'll tell you, movie night with the family hasn't been the same since then. I'll just put it like that.
Right. And then when you were talking about sorcerers, magicians, and what was the other one?
I don't know. Just people that fancied them.
You said sorcerers, magicians, and what was the third one?
Probably wizards.
Wizards. Yeah, I thought you were talking about the creation of NASA, because that's who runs NASA. Nazi sorcerers, wizards, and magicians. That's what NASA was founded on.
Okay, so let's talk about NASA for a little bit, and I know that partially due to the technical hiccup there at the beginning, we're probably going to be running short on time. So anytime you're ready to cut this off, just give me a couple minutes heads up, because there's just one more thing I'll need you to do for us.
This is my last interview of the day.
Perfect. So, talking about NASA, there's one gentleman, one friend of the show that we've had on a number of different times. He's a member of the Eclipse Committee and does the coordination with NASA and Southern Illinois University. And he's also part of the Citizen Kate project, where they use the big superpowered telescopes to look at eclipses and look at the moon. And when they're not looking at eclipses in the moon, they're looking however far off for exoplanets, and they've found so many. So talk to me about this. So those everyday people that are in everyday positions, thinking that they're doing something good, contributing to society, and finding these exoplanets every day. What are they looking at out there?
Yeah. So they're not seeing exoplanets. They're seeing a star, and then it gets a little dim, and then it gets a little bright, and they're theorizing that there's a planet blocking that star, orbiting, taking away some of the lights. So it's just a math equation, and no one has ever seen an exoplanet. We could barely see Pluto, right? Which is a millimeter in front of us compared to things that are 1,000 miles away. That's the distances, the proportion. So all of that stuff is they're being fooled. Many of them are being fooled. Many of them are, in on it, but most are being fooled. So, the largest telescopes in the world, besides being owned by the Vatican, are in the deep south looking outwards. They're not looking up, they're looking outwards. Right. So, what are they looking for? What's coming from across the plane? Why are all of the planets, aka wandering stars, all on the same plane? Right? They should be coming in like in every direction, orbiting the sun, but they're all on the same plane. That's because they're all circling over the flat Earth.
Mm.
They're all circling right here within the Earth system.
Yeah, that's interesting that you mentioned the fact that what they're looking at through those telescopes is, they're looking at stars, and that they're seeing the fluctuation in the brightness of that star. Bob actually did tell me in a few of our conversations, he has mentioned it. That is one of the things that they look for. That is an indicator. That's what they focus on. When they're looking for those exoplanets, is they look for that fluctuation of light. So from then on, I guess it's just some sort of estimate and figuring it out from there. But, again, just interesting that you mentioned that, and just trying to connect those dots for some of our listeners.
Well, they have a belief that there's planets out there, and the dimming of the light is their belief that the planet is going in front of the star. And none of that is true. It's all just everything's here within the Earth system. We've sent up balloons at nighttime in Arizona with high def cameras looking up, and on a clear night. So before we even take it off, the balloons are filming beautiful starry nights. So when the balloon goes up, when it gets to 5, 10,000 feet, 20,000 feet, you'd think that the stars would be brighter and clearer, right? Because you're above any the thickest atmosphere, and it's just going to get brighter and brighter, and more stars are going to come into view. But by the time we hit 60,000 feet, 70,000 feet, 80,000 feet, all of the stars disappear. All of them. We can see them from the ground, and as it goes up, the stars start blinking out, and then they're all gone.
So
silence is the best answer, because I don't know the reason. I mean, I could speculate on what's going on, but it totally defies the heliocentric model. We should be able to see more and more stars brighter and brighter as we get up above the thickest part of the atmosphere. But the opposite happens. They all disappear.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Apparently we'll get more answers here soon, because apparently I guess what we're talking about going to the moon again soon. But anyhow, I I digress from that. I've got my questions about all that as well. But you've mentioned stars and things like that. I've stumbled across some very interesting reads here that actually started probably 5 or 6 years ago, and I couldn't really find anything further up until now. But I wanted to bring Neil deGrasse Tyson back up, and I wanted to bring up a potential question that he might get down the road, but probably wouldn't get through the call fielder. What do you think Neil deGrasse Tyson's response would be to someone asking him about the possibility of Saturn once being a star?
He might say that it's a failed star or whatever. I don't believe it. I believe Saturn is a sun. Okay, Saturn is a sun just like a star. So
right,
they're always telling us the truth. Like one of the models is that Mars is a sun circling outside of Antarctica, right? And Venus is a moon also out there. All right. Venus has phases just like our moon, and Saturn. And then if you model that over a glass dome, it looks just like a star inside the dome, where, in our middle Earth area. So is Saturn and Venus a sun and a moon? And it is actually, I'm sorry. Mars and Venus are the sun and moon, and then the outer ring is Saturn and Jupiter as a sun and a moon. It's very possible, but again, these are all things that are above our reach. We don't have the tools to view them properly. So that again, that is speculation, but the movements that they make a lot of sense when
Mm.
viewing them like that. But again, that again, anything beyond the shoreline of Antarctica or above 73 miles is speculation.
Okay. So bringing up Antarctica, I guess a little cliche, but when people think of flat Earth and first come across flat Earth, one of the first things that they come up with is Admiral Byrd. Where do stories and situations like that come from? If it's some big cover up, I mean, and again, just your thoughts. I know there's likely we'll never know the real right or wrong, and we all have to remember the truth usually lies somewhere in the middle. Where do stories like that come from, where you get respected, high-ranking individuals saying one thing, but it really goes nowhere?
So I guess in the 40s and 50s, they started exploring Antarctica, and Admiral Byrd flew out, and he did one television interview saying beyond the poles, beyond the South Pole, there's land bigger than the United States and filled with resources that no human has ever stepped foot on. And right after he said that, we never heard from him again. He died shortly after that, and they started the Antarctic Treaty, right? Treaty in 1959, and it's still in effect now, and it goes until the year 2041. No one's even allowed to question the treaty. It's the only treaty in history that's ever remained in place for any period of time.
So hang on, you mean in a world full of countries and people that can't get along and stop wars for long enough to have a discussion, this treaty has remained in place this long? We can all agree on this.
And yeah, we can all agree on this. And no plane is allowed to fly over Antarctica because they don't want to disturb the penguins. The penguins can't hear a plane fly over Antarctica. So but meanwhile, we can deforest the Amazon and plant palm oil trees and just destroy the world, but we can't fly a plane over Antarctica. And the reason you can't fly a plane over Antarctica is because you can't fly a plane over Antarctica because it's the land that surrounds our world. It's not the land under our world. So that's in place. If you try to go explore Antarctica, I forget the guy's name, but he got permission from his country, got a permit to go to Antarctica. And before he even got to the shore, he was stopped by 2 military ships, threatened to sink him, turned him around, sent him home. And when he got home, he was arrested and jailed, right, for trying to go to Antarctica to explore. So, all the dignitaries, they all go to Antarctica on these special trips. John Kerry went on election day a couple elections ago. That was weird. And weird things happen in Antarctica.
Now, let's this might be a little heavy considering the conversation this far, but let's get a little weird now. Then, speaking of Antarctica, then I've heard some people speculate that there may be some sort of opening or something of significance there as far as Antarctica goes. Does something like your view of the flat Earth leave room for something like the hollow Earth or anything like that?
I think the hollow Earth was introduced after Admiral Byrd said there's more land beyond the poles. So they had no way to explain that on a globe. So they came up with the hollow Earth. And the hollow Earth is just another prison for your mind. It's still a heliocentric world,
Gotcha.
whether it's hollow or not. It's a prison for your mind. You remember the True Man show with Jim Carrey? And he said, I want to be an explorer.
Yeah.
And the teacher said, sorry, Truman, everything's been explored. Everything's been discovered already. Well, that's the world that we live on. Everything's been discovered already. No, it hasn't. This world is way, way bigger than they say. There was a Japanese map found not that long ago, some years ago, and it had showed like 50 other continents beyond the shoreline of Antarctica. 50 other continents. 50.
Wow.
Okay? And it was in the New York Times, the New York Journal at the time, in 18 something. It was before the New York Times, but it was in the newspaper. It's crazy. Right?
Yeah.
Learn about that in school. They hide all of this from you in school, and the fact that Antarctica is off limits uh, is amazing. The fact that NASA is in charge of all radar, all GPS, all plane routes, that tells you something because we can prove that NASA's faking everything. Just the fact that all the photos of planets and Earth are faked, admittedly, they're made in Photoshop, that they're when they're on the space station, that they're faking anti-gravity. They're hanging from wires. They have green screen glitches. They're doing their flips and they get tangled in their wires. Just have to see that once to know that they're lying about everything.
Little Cirque du Soleil action. Yeah, there's again something that you said. It made me key in on it. With the homeschooling that was going on lately, there were some lessons that I was able to kind of sit in and listen in a little bit more on, and one of them really made me think of something that I had learned a long time ago that I really didn't fully appreciate until I came across this. And it was during one of the lessons on 9/11 that my 11-year-old was having to take. And it made me think of the saying just based on the material. And I'm not going to get into it because it's a completely different discussion. But, it made me think of the saying that I had heard that fake news eventually gets taught as history.
Oh yeah, they're brainwashing the kids. And I'd say in a decade from now, Building 7 will never have existed. And you're familiar with Building 7, of course, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so Building 7 fell into its own footprint. I bet you're not familiar with Building 6.
Is that the one that they announced fell before it had even fell?
No, that's Building 7. That's the one that
Okay.
at 5:20 p.m. that day, and it wasn't hit by an airplane. Building 6 was a 10-story building, a full city block wide, and the entire inside of the building, all the way to the basement, disappeared.
What was housed in that building? What helped?
I'm not 100% sure. That one wasn't. The Building 7 had the emergency response bunker in it, but building 6, I'm not sure what was in there, but the building was like if you had a half a gallon of ice cream and you scooped all of the ice cream out, just leaving a wall of ice cream around the edge. That's what happened to Building 7, and there was nothing down there. Nothing fell and hit it. So don't ask me to explain what happened, but it had these cylindrical holes all the way down to the ground, and then all of the building vaporized.
Yeah.
All right? Nobody knows about that, but it happened. Don't ask me to explain it.
Well, what I thought was the worst, and what I don't think well-intentioned teachers realize they're doing, is that the lesson had pointed out that the reason that it had taken place was because there were bad men from a different country that had beliefs, and they didn't like the freedom that Americans had. And the whole time, Dave, they were showing pictures of men with beards and dark hair. I mean, it was ridiculous, the seeds that they were sowing.
Let me tell you, I don't know if you were, do you know about Gaddafi, Muammar Gaddafi?
So
you don't know a lot.
So I'm going to try to nutshell it, but I believe I heard an ex-special ops guy by the name of Chris Peranto talking about this particular situation. Does that make sense?
I'm not sure who he is. What did you hear?
That they were sent in to try and extract a senator that had certain information from Gaddafi.
Yeah. This goes way before that. So,
okay,
when I was a kid, I saw Gaddafi speak at the UN on television. And he was angry, and he's got that scary face and his greasy hair, and he was ranting in a language I couldn't understand. And the news was saying, "This is a horrible man. We have to stop him. One day he's going to take over the world." Well, then when I heard a translation, many years later, of what he was saying that the New World Order is going to take over the world and I think he even picked the date of the year in the 2020, saying that they're going to try to take over the world with a fake virus. That's what he was saying at the UN. Okay. He was screaming about how they're going to use a virus to take over the world and have a new world order. So backing up a couple decades, when he was looking for oil, he was drilling down and he tapped into primary water. They don't teach you about primary water in school. They teach you about secondary water, evaporation, condensation, and precipitation. Well, that's secondary water. Primary water is the water below us and the water above us. Space is most likely water. So he tapped into this water, which is a endless supply of pristine water. And so he built the largest aquifer project in human history. Okay. And he started pumping water in these giant pipes, burying these pipes through the desert. It took him 40 years. Any family that wanted to start a farm, an organic farm, it had to be organic. He gave them, land, water, food, seeds, tractors, everything they needed, cattle. And
Sounds like a terrorist.
yeah, it sounds like a terrorist. So all of these organic farms were popping up all across Africa, and he was going to feed all of Africa with this water. And then he also nationalized oil sales. So the corporations didn't get the money, the people got the money. Right. So all of these things. And then when he finished, Hillary Clinton and the Council of Foreign Relations or the UN, they went in there and blew up the man-made river with depleted uranium bombs. Okay. And so this man, and then they eventually killed him. We saw he died, whatever.
It was horrible too.
Yeah. So Muammar Gaddafi, he would drive down the city streets standing up through his sunroof, waving to people. He'd walk down the streets and people would kiss his hands and hug him. And, and we were taught to believe that if they didn't do that, he'd chop off their heads. Right. But he was this loved man. While that's going on, Obama is driving down the 95 corridor through my town, and they shut off 10 exits in a row and have 15 decoy cars because he's so loved. Right. It's unreal, how we are deceived, made to look, I was always afraid of Muammar Gaddafi. He was the greatest leader that ever lived, ever. And people have no idea, and that's all going to disappear. I have a video I made on my YouTube channel. My YouTube channel is the initials for Deep Inside the Rabbit Hole. It's just DITRH. Just look up Gaddafi, Muammar Gaddafi, DITRH, and it's called the Great. Or just look up the Great Man-Made River, DITRH, and watch that, and it'll bring tears to your eyes. Short video, and it'll blow you away.
Very interesting. Well, I do know just from these few conversations and the book that Chris Peranto put out, the particular person that they were contracted to extract had information about arms dealing between certain people in the U.S. and other factions in the Middle East, and this person was supposed to come back and testify as far as that information goes. Well, that person, due to some insurgent activity, never made it out, and the only a few members of this group of contractors made it out. One of those was Chris Peranto, and he went on record saying the only reason they made it out was because of the help they received from Gaddafi's personal security force. So again, if he's such a bad man, and again, I'm not asking anybody to make a decision. I'm just asking the question: why would he provide personal security to get this person back with this important information?
When he took over Libya, it was the poorest, most uneducated country in Africa, and he took over the healthcare, the education system. He gave everybody free education, higher free education. All medical was free, and if they couldn't do the surgery that you might need in that country, he'd fly you to another country, get it done, and fly you back and take care of you. Any car you wanted to buy, the government would pay 50% of it. Electricity was free. Gas was 14 cents a gallon. Okay. And he housed everybody in that country before he housed his parents who were living in a tent. He said housing is a human right. And when you get married, you get $50,000 towards a house. And it's everything he did was amazing, and he's demonized in the world.
Well, I'll tell you, there's
on my channel too.
There's a lot of interesting questions, and I don't pretend to even come close to having any of the answers. And to be upfront with you, anytime I ask myself or other people these questions, I only end up coming up with more questions for myself. So
sure.
I don't know. I don't know where it leaves us all. But there is one thing. Go ahead, Dave.
Jason, here's the thing. you know that you don't know, which makes you smarter than all of the people that think they know and don't know anything, right? You know that you don't know. That puts you in the top 1% of the people on this planet as far as thinking.
Yeah. Well, I'll take that as a compliment. I guess I do appreciate that. I guess, Dave, there is one thing that I do know. It's that, like you said, there's a lot of consistencies that we can take a look at of things that we have been told. One of those things that I look at is things that we've been told and we've learned about karma. How the universe works. Bad actions receive bad repercussions, depending on how you look at it. We've been told by a number of different religions not to lie because lying is bad. And when I look at that thing, when I look at that, I sit and I look at some of the things like what we've been told about to be afraid of. You mentioned this virus earlier. You've mentioned a number of different things, and there's always a little bit of truth in that. And like I said, I a lot of that I feel is due to karma. We have to be told a certain amount of information, and then it's up to us. It doesn't interfere with our free will. And I think that goes back to what you were saying about keeping a hold of our soul. If we're told that we're giving it up and we give it up, then that's that.
That's on you.
I know that sounded like a bunch of drivel there, but it's getting to the point. I beg people to ask the questions. Ask the questions. Never be satisfied, and always wait for the answers that make sense.
Sure. Well said.
So one thing that I did want to say, Dave, before I told you there's another tradition that we have on the show. We're going to close out with that here before long, but I did want to leave you with an opportunity. You mentioned some videos and some things like that. Anyone looking to ask questions, anyone looking for possible answers, anyone just looking for that next step, where would you advise them to go, and where can they go to learn a little bit more about you and what you have to offer?
Yeah, so the if you try to search flat Earth on the internet, you're just going to get discouraged. You're going to get a bunch of garbage. They've resorted into the turd in the punch bowl method, where every day they upload hundreds of videos that say flat Earth in them that are just nonsense. They're paid trolls. They're just garbage videos, and they're basically making it so it's almost impossible to find any of the fruit out there. And there's lots of fruit out there. So I created an app, and it's for Android 8.0 or higher, or an iPhone 6 or higher. It's called the Flat Earth Sun, Moon, and Zodiac Clock app. They're already hiding that one on Google, on the Google Play Store. It's hard to find. It's by Blue Water Bay. If you're looking for it, it's $2.99, and at one-time charge. And the app it bypasses YouTube's algorithms. It shows you how the seasons work. It shows you how the sky is a perfect clock. It shows you where the zodiac, where the moon and the sun is in the zodiac. Oh, so much useful information. It has all my interviews in it. It has just so much stuff. It shows you how a compass works. It shows you how seasons work. But every day there's a featured video. I do short ones during the week, longer ones on the weekend. And I tell people, I say, just if you think flat Earth is stupid, watch the featured video every day for 2 weeks. It's when you have your morning coffee or whatever, sit down, put the video on, and then you'll be scratching your head. And at the end of that 2 weeks, if you think that the Earth is still a globe, send me a proof, and you win a Bitcoin. All right, that's $60,000 for those that don't know right now. And but before you do that, you have to hit the question mark, which is the frequently asked question page. There's 21 of the questions that you're going to ask. And it like, what about eclipses? What about day and night? What about sunsets over the ocean? Where does the sun go? Southern flights. Click any one of those. Up comes a playlist of video after video after video that YouTube, Google will not serve you, right? That you can look at, you can verify yourself, you can do these experiments yourself. And then you too will know that we don't live on a spinning ball in an infinite vacuum, which is just impossible. So that's called the Flat Earth Sun, Moon, and Zodiac Clock app. And if you're unsure about paying for an app, just read the reviews. Just read the reviews. You'll see. It's the highest rated app. Everyone loves it. It's unbelievable, and it's awesome. And I made it. And my YouTube channel, DITRH, the initials for Deep Inside the Rabbit Hole. My podcast, my Facebook page, my Instagram are The Flat Earth Podcast. And if you forget all of this, just go to theflatearthpodcast.com and everything's linked there. Theflatearthpodcast.com.
Beautiful. You know, I do have to add to that, Dave. You know you're onto something. You know you have something good if it's being blocked and hidden. We did an episode a few years back on the Federal Reserve, and we have been non-existent on Facebook ever since then. We have been continuously buried.
Yeah.
So
that's where I started with the Federal Reserve. That's what got me into questioning this crazy system we live in.
Which reminded me of a quote before I let you close us out. Reminded me of a quote. You mentioned astrology earlier. It's an alleged quote that I read from J.P. Morgan that said, millionaires don't need astrology. Or no, maybe he said millionaires don't use astrology.
Billionaires do.
Yep.
Something like
you
that.
got it. You got it.
That's
Something
true.
like that.
I used to laugh at astrology. I took 4 years of astronomy in college. I was the man. I was so good at it. The girls used to come to my room to help me tutor them. Astronomy was very good to me. Astronomy is pseudoscience. It's unbelievable. I studied nonsense for 4 years. And it's unbelievable. It's the indoctrination is incredible.
Yeah. I would agree with you. But look, last tradition here, which Dave, the talks that I've heard you involved in, I wanted to take this conversation so many different ways. I felt it could have went so many different ways. And to anyone in the platoon that's listening, if it felt like it was starting to go a lot of different ways and didn't make a lot of sense, you know, maybe we can have you back with a little bit more planning sometime down the road and kind of zero in on some of those topics and really expand on some of them. Because like I said, there's a lot of great stuff and there's a lot of great information out there that gets people asking the right questions. Dave, we have our last tradition. What we like to do for our faithful members of the Pearled Up Platoon, we like to leave them with an episodic pearl of wisdom. We like to leave them with a nice thought, some sage advice to help get them through the rest of the week. So putting you on the spot, Flat Earth Dave, what is your pearl of wisdom for the members of the Pearled Up Platoon this week?
My pearled up wisdom is just remember the rules of this world. Maintain the control of your soul. Don't break anyone's free will. Help your neighbor. And remember that belief is the enemy of knowing. You can believe anything you want, but knowing takes time and effort and critical thought.
And always remember on top of that, ladies and gentlemen, stay pearled, world.
The Fifth Avenue Syndicate, your place for chef-inspired cuisine and handcrafted cocktails. Let our chefs treat you to a night out. Try our shrimp risotto with avocado puree and balsamic reduction, or our surf and turf with beef tenderloin, shrimp, grilled asparagus, risotto, and a red wine reduction. Both are amazing. Pair with one of our Prohibition-style cocktails for a night you'll never forget.